Hi folks, I love machining and I love what I get to do. I want to walk you guys through how we got here. What's our story? This all started for me back in about 2005. I'd grown up as a competitive rifle shooter doing target shooting, and I wanted a better target, one that would automatically reset as a piece of steel. So I had this idea in my head, and I eventually found an engineer and hired him to help us build this prototype. And I had built Lego versions of it, I built wood versions of it, I tried to weld together some steel versions, and I had grown up on a family farm in Central Ohio. My grandfather was a welder, so I had a little bit of exposure in that sense. But honestly, I didn't know at this point what a Bridgeport was, what an end mill was. I really didn't know anything. I hired this engineer, and he came up with the drawings. It's actually fun. He did it in Pro Engineer. These terms are things I now know and relate to, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to be part of the conversation with him, and I wasn't able to do that at the time. He talked about how to make parts and how complex they were, and he used his network and contacts to reach out to machine shops and fabrication shops, and that's really expensive. And when we were done with this first prototype, it actually worked really well for a first version prototype, for like an alpha prototype, particularly given how complex this thing is. I mean, literally, it had water jet AR500 steel, it had sheet metal parts, it was welded together, it had circuit boards and sensors and batteries and motors. It was complicated, and it was expensive. And we got to the end of that and had a partner in the business at the time, and I said, I don't really know how to move forward because it worked, but we needed to make revisions, but it's gonna be so expensive, and I have no idea how much it's going to cost to make, who's going to produce it. I graduated college and I'm living in New York City. I work for a real estate company doing commercial real estate, buying buildings and improving buildings. And I love doing that and I love doing this, but the two weren't, the skill sets there didn't help me here. So we put the business on hold. And I ended up buying a TEG CNC milling machine. Thing is tiny, and look back on it, I could lift the whole machine myself. And I have this picture, which I think is awesome, because if you look in the bottom right corner of the picture, you can see the pillow of my 1-bedroom New York City apartment. So I have a very supportive wife. We were actually engaged, I think, at the time, but I literally put a milling machine in my New York City apartment. And we have a lot of fans on the channel who have watched us since then, which is super cool. My goal was not to become a machinist. My goal was not this, to be sitting in this shop. My goal was to be able to talk to engineers, talk to machine shops, and when they talked about tolerances, knew that those are answered usually with thousandths of an inch. I had no idea. So over the next 2 years, I just started making stuff, and I totally fell in love with it. I didn't expect to. It was so much fun. This idea that you could go from CAD to CAM to making a part, and for me, I could do it on the nights and the weekends in New York City. It was my outlet. Ever the people wanted to go party or go out and do sports and stuff, I just wanted to make stuff. The other really cool thing that happened, it was really fortuitous timing, was there was this just general nationwide renaissance in making, and I think there was probably some specific stuff to New York City, oddly, that was really helpful. I hung out some at a place called New York City Resistor, which was one of the first maker spaces. I took some Arduino classes there. I took some software classes. Some of the early guys from the MakerBot story were there building the first prototype of the machine. So there was an energy that I still get when I visit New York City or California that's actually pretty cool, I will admit. When you get these people together doing this kind of stuff. That got me excited. For me, Arduino was this eye-opening moment where now I can take a sensor and a motor and make things happen. And for me, on the target business, that's exactly what I needed. When the target falls, I want it to trip a sensor, reset the target by activating a motor with a battery. Awesome. So ended up building the second version of that target myself in my New York City apartment, which was super cool for two reasons. One, it gave me the confidence to know that I could actually make some parts. It took forever. I mean, literally it took months. And it gave me a much better ability to talk to machine shops. And I went and I did that. I literally rented a car, I think they had a Zip car in New York City at the time, and I drove to fabrication shops looking for people to help make the parts. I thought they were gonna be subbed out to different people. We ended up finding a place in Rhode Island that wanted to take the whole project on. So they said, let us make the stuff, we'll farm out what we're not good at. They weren't a machine shop, they were more of a fabrication shop. But it was great, and in hindsight was really lucky because they were able to quarterback this whole project and tie everything together, and they were kind of responsible for all of those processes. I ended up building a working relationship with them, and I became a better machinist and I became a better hardware entrepreneur because I was able to work with them. They didn't care that I had this little New York City CNC machine where I'd machine this 4140 part. But they did, because it gave me the conviction. They thought, this kid is gonna determine, he's gonna do something. So what really happened is kind of funny. We sold the targets, it was super awesome. I loved using them, I loved trying to sell them, but it wasn't clear where that business was going to go, partly because, again, I'm in New York City, I have a day job that I like, and I wasn't even close to willing to quit my day job to pursue a very uncertain business like this. So what happened was, we were invited to military ranges, to private events, and we realized we needed to take first-person perspective videos of our targets being used. So I thought, well, hey, we've got a milling machine, let's mount cameras onto the rails. My partner at the time was a skydiver who had used GoPros before they were a household name like they are today. So long story short, we were, I believe, the first to market with ways to fasten GoPro mounts to Picatinny rails and other platforms like that. We then made contour mounts, we made standard tripod mounts, and long story short, these things took off. So one of the links in the article below is why I believe as an entrepreneur, you're better off succeeding with a small victory. The camera mounts ended up being big, but what was important about those camera mounts was they were relatively inexpensive and quick to make, quick to finish. They were lower cost to buy, and it gave us a chance to get a real business under our feet. The targets were expensive electromechanical assembly, the long build time, a long sales process, very complicated. The mounts were super simple. We made them, we had them anodized, we then had them lasered, and we sold them direct to customers, and it was awesome. There were some lucky things. Again, we were just starting to get into the YouTube days where people were wanting to post, going out and paintballing or going out with their friends. So that definitely helped. And then we hustled. I made thousands of these mounts on my first Tormach, which I'm sitting next to right now, in my New York basement. I'd moved out to the suburbs by this point because I wanted a Tormach and I wanted a truck. And you couldn't have those things in Manhattan. I wanted to be able to drive to these machine shops, drive around. I wanted to have a basement where I could have tools and a Tormach. Literally, when I moved to the suburbs, I told my wife, I want a walkout basement or garage so that I can buy a Tormach. Tormach was then the best machine that I could afford. It was my dream machine. And honestly, to this day, it is the best platform you can buy at that price. That's one reason why I'm proud that it's been a big part of our story. So we made these camera mounts, and that was what was awesome, is you go through that full process. We had to buy raw material, then we had the raw material saw cut, then we had some of the raw material op-1'd by a machine shop, because I didn't have the ability to get big sticks. They wouldn't even deliver to a residential house. So I had to have the material saw cut up at my in-laws' house. This is the stuff you go through as an entrepreneur. You just figure it out. I used to build wire harness assemblies for our targets when we would drive up to visit my wife's parents. Literally in my front seat, I had this jig where I would crimp on wires and solder wires on. Actually, I didn't solder in the truck, but I was able to do a bunch of that work. But with the camera mounts, then it's talking to anodizers, figuring out how to work with anodizers. We found a laser marking company. We poly-sealed the bags up. We fulfilled all the orders ourselves. Literally, we would stuff them in a blue mailbox when we'd go to work to take the train into New York City in the morning. And it was awesome. That business grew to the point where then we started subbing out the machine. I loved making them, but I had a Tormach and I'm working a job. So the first order that we sent out was for 1,000 pieces. And we knew how to make them. We knew how they needed to be made. We knew that there needed to be a relief around the 1032 thread. We knew the tolerance of the Picatinny rail. And when you talk to machine shops and you know what you're doing and you have the solid model and you've made them before, they want your business. That's a really good win-win compared to John 3 years ago, where I was cold calling machine shops with no knowledge of how to talk about fabrication and plates and products. And we figured it out, but it was a lot harder. So what happened? We kept running that business. Ultimately, that partnership failed. We had very different beliefs and directions, and that was a low point. That was really hard for me. That business was a big part of my identity. We were proud of what it had been. My partner had a connection to the Navy, and we were able to get a demonstration and then ultimately sales to what's called Naval Special Warfare Group. So I was pretty young and was able to say, the product that I came up with was literally being used by the Navy SEALs. That was really cool. Of course, I guess I would be lying if it's not a little bit of a brag, but it's also the confidence. You need those little victories as an entrepreneur to validate what you're doing. And I loved it. I loved making stuff, not only making the products, but I loved making the business, the idea of pulling people together, being a team. Literally, I would take days off work and go out to like SHOT Show in Vegas, and we'd meet with people and sell, and it was really fun. Throughout that whole time, I was grateful for the folks that had helped us on Practical Machinist, CNC Zone. I'd rented SmartFlix DVDs trying to watch like the Daryl Holland videos on gunsmithing to learn how to do machining and turning on a lathe. So I thought, look, I have a digital camera. I've made some iMovie videos before. I'm gonna start trying to share this stuff on YouTube because I knew that when you gave back, people were more willing to help you. Literally, that's what I thought. Be a good member of this community. No thought that the YouTube channel would go anywhere, and I love it. Fast forward, it's become, I think, pretty big for this industry, and it's a chance for us to share what we do. It started out with me probably a lot more experimenting. Now I think we're a little bit more deliberate in what we do, and hopefully trying to inspire and train other people not only to run machines, but have the confidence to know how to do that, how to learn. And for me, the big thing is also, how do you become a machinist, a machine shop owner, a business owner, an entrepreneur? That to me is the cool part. It's not just setting up a part. It's not just the CAD. It's not just the cam. And that's what this website is all about. It's not just any one of those things. It's tying them all together. It's the, how do you get insurance for a machine shop? How do you start an LLC? What tools to buy? How to run machines, speeds and feeds, all of that stuff. After the StrikeMark partnership kind of failed, it was one of those moments where you think, okay, where am I going with all this? I had enjoyed my stay in New York City. I'd worked for this real estate company for about 9 years, and I thought, I don't want to be in New York City the rest of my life. I really like machining. I had been taking on job shop work for 2 reasons. One, to push me outside of my comfort zone and to make some money. I'd been taking on enough job shop work, and I thought, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I can get enough job shop work, and I think I can make enough of the products that I had in my head to deliver, to sell, that I can pull this off. I also left New York City and moved to where I grew up here in Zanesville, Ohio, which is a much lower cost of living. And that's another key part to being an entrepreneur. My business, what I do, doesn't work in New York City. It doesn't work in Silicon Valley. It doesn't work in a place where a shop like this would cost probably tens of thousands of dollars a month to be in. And that to me was great. I love being here in Ohio. My wife likes it. We have 2 kids now, so very happy family. And that's awesome. Like, that to me has all come together. So when we moved back, that was the first time I was ever relying on a CNC machine for my full-time income. I still only had my one Tormach mill, and we did it. We hustled, made the YouTube videos, trying to make as much job shop work as I can. And since then, I think our story has probably been a little bit more public. People have seen us grow. We moved shops from the farm shop to a temporary shop into this shop. And we've since grown. We bought more Tormach machines, which we use both for the job shop stuff and for the CNC training classes that we have. And we've got the Haas VM3. We just got a little VF2. I've got more products coming that are in my head that I think are going to be pretty awesome, but we'll see. I find that I'm probably a better executor of products than I am a visionary of thinking of creative things. That's just part of who I am. And look, part of being an entrepreneur is being comfortable with what you are good at and knowing what you're not good at. Finding other people on your team, either in your company or just friends that can help you fill those gaps of what you're not good at. One of the things I love is anybody can do this. I've had a few things that work in my favor. I grew up in a family that was very financially disciplined. My parents always taught me to save my money. I've always avoided debt. And I think that's been key because I've never had to stress about I need to make a payment on the Tormach or else. I think that freedom to focus is really important. And I know this sounds crazy. We started with a tag. We made some money on the tag. We bought the Tormach. The truth is we probably used some of the money from my day job to buy the Tormach as well. I don't think I'd really made that much money with the tag, but it got me to the point where I was comfortable sitting down with my wife and saying, we should buy this machine. Oh, you know what it was? Also, we've been sending so much money to machine shops to make prototypes. That was the easy way to justify buying the Tormach. It's been a while since I thought through this stuff, but no joke, we have then steamrolled it. And that's the awesome thing. When you start that way, you don't have debt payments to make, and it helps you make it easier to pay cash for machines. And not everyone's going to believe that. I'm a pretty big believer in Dave Ramsey, if you've followed him, and I don't believe everything Dave says, but generally it's my preference, it's my style. Take that for what you will. And the other big thing is I also went to college for entrepreneurship. That's definitely an advantage, but I'll tell you, a lot of what I've learned has been through the last 10 years of work, and I'm trying to repost and share as much of that as I can here on this site. So don't think just because you didn't have some chance. I didn't work as a machinist. I didn't go through an apprenticeship. That hasn't stopped me. I went to college for business and entrepreneurship. I think that was important, but it's not a reason not to do it for you at all. So that's our story. A lot of people ask us, where are you going? I have no idea. If you had told me 3 years ago, our YouTube channel would have grown from, I don't even know what it was, like 30,000 to I think we're somewhere around 190 now. That's crazy to me. 10 years ago, this would have been lunacy to me. I'm not a huge believer in those like long-term, where are you going? I love machining. That's key. You have to love what you do. And I think Mike Rowe says it really well in some of the videos and writings that Mike Rowe from the Dirty Jobs show has done. You not only have to love what you're doing, it's got to provide a means to an income. And one of my other big beliefs is I don't care how much money you make, you have to make enough money to justify the lifestyle you want to live. That's it. I will tell you, having the products early on was key. Starting off as a job shop, especially with no skill and only a Tormach, that would have been tough to build it into something what it was. So having that mix has really helped us. That's something we continue to this day. Job shop work is fun. It makes you think outside the box, but it's difficult. We are more profitable on products, but I like doing it all. That's fun. It's fun to me. You get to do what you want, and that's what I want to do. So I don't know where we're going. To me, this website is a big part of our future. It's trying to share, trying to inspire, trying to keep going with the training, teach people how to use Fusion, try to figure out what new technology is coming out there. What are good answers for people? How do you do it? Your Tormach's logo is enabling your ideas. Autodesk's is the future of making things. All those sort of things get me fired up. If I have one thing I wish I could do more of, it's Arduino. I don't have the time. Luckily, we've got a guy now here who's focusing solely on Arduino, and it gets me so fired up because that's tying it all together. When I was a kid, there's a museum in Columbus called COSI, and they had a robot that would draw your name, and that to me was one of those formidable moments. I just remember seeing that and thinking, yes, I didn't know what the bearings were and the motion and servos, but that to me, I looked at that and I thought, that's what I want to do, or that's what I want to own, or that's what I want to be involved in. And in some respects, machining has been a really, really long detour of that whole idea of automating things and combining Arduinos and automation and code and programming with these machine products. So folks, that's our story. Thanks for watching.